And welcome back to Photography Live and Uncut. Yeah, I've been away for a couple of weeks. Fortunately, got to earn some pennies, put some bread on the table for the family. And I'm back, and I couldn't be more pleased. My guest, who I've been asking for some time now to join me on the show, such a busy man, Derrick Story of The Digital Story. Welcome to my show, Derrick.
Hi, Paul. Glad to be here.
That's very kind of you to join me all the way on the west coast of America there.
That's right. Way over here.
Exactly right. Getting some decent weather as well. I think as I just said before we start, I think we've had our summer day of the summer. So there we go. Yeah. That's the way it goes. Derrick, I really want to, I'm keen to talk to you about your photography and obviously your writing, but let's start off first of all, writer or photographer? What is Derrick Story?
Well, both actually. I use the two together, and for a long time in my career, I was a photojournalist. Because newspapers and companies and so forth would hire me because they could send one guy to do both. At the end of the day, I think I'm a little bit stronger in writing. I think writing is really one of my favorite things.
Okay, so you say photojournalist. So what sort of activities were you involved with in going out in the field?
Well, I worked for newspapers at a time when you were a teenager or in your 20s and you could get those sort of jobs. And I covered everything. I worked for local newspapers. So when you work for a small outfit, a small publisher like that, you do everything from high school sports to traffic accidents to you name it. Anything that is deemed newsworthy. We actually had a police scanner in our car, and we would have to keep an eye out for stuff. And I would go and shoot the pictures, write the story, head back to the darkroom, get some negatives developed, print them up, and get them into the production area.
And then the story would be published on from there. Is this something which you always wanted to do straight from we call it school here and high school? Was that you're interested? Always writing?
And photography, both. So I started taking pictures when I was 11 years old, and actually set up a dark room when I was 11 in the family garage. And I was writing at the same time. So they've always gone hand in hand. It's always been writing and photography and writing. And there have been different periods in my life where one would be a little bit more dominant than the other. But they've always gone hand in hand, and that's all I've ever done. I've never done anything else. I dabbled some in graphics to make a living at times, when the writing and photography would dry up a bit.
Yeah.
But since I was 11 years old, this is what I've done.
And one question which I've always loved to ask my guests when they come on: what was the first camera that you can recollect in your household when you were a young kid?
Well, my great uncle gave me an Argus C3, which is looks like a brick with a lens on the front and a couple gears, and that was the first camera. I'm the only photographer in the family, so it wasn't like my dad wasn't doing this or anything else. This was my interest, and I brought it into the household. But I had a great uncle who was a cartoonist.
Oh, okay.
And he wrote cartoons for Mad Magazine and Cracked. Cracked was very big in those days also. And so he dabbled in all the arts, drawing, photography, all that. And so he spotted my aptitude and gave me my first camera.
That's a nice start. Nice start. Now I'm just catching on some recent photographs that I've seen. Probably this was last season. Big basketball fan out in the West Coast there.
Yes.
Was there any sporting activity at school or was it purely just writing and photography which your interest was in?
Well, I shot a lot of sports. I was one of those kids. I was a yearbook photographer for 3 years in college. I was on the school newspaper. I've always done this. So I've shot everything, and I shot the Beijing Olympics for Kodak and Apple. Actually, that shot that's up behind me, that's opening ceremonies from Beijing. So I've shot Olympic sport and everything in between. And the way I got into the NBA, Warriors team here, the tickets were impossible to get, but I used to get tickets every now and then, and I published photos. And they actually called me up and said, we think you should have some seats, and we worked something out.
Oh, that's kind of them. That's kind of them.
Yeah.
So because I remember, were you there with your son? I remember there's some photographs there you're taking with your iPhone or your Android phone. Then you'd sneaked in your nimble nimble camera bag and take some shots, which we'll talk about that later, because it's interesting. You started a nimble photographer just as I started my little dabble with one camera, one lens, which unfortunately it didn't survive one camera, one lens. It never does.
Right.
I'm still writing and putting photographs on that blog, but the one camera, one lens is sort of they've had a family, put it that way. We moved on.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the cameras that you've had in the past, and you're very fortunate in the sense with your writing. You obviously get given equipment to review and write, and your Digital Story podcast is really based around that. And I really want to talk about your podcast later on, but. Digital photography, obviously Digital Story. What was the first digital camera that you owned?
Well, when digital photography first came around, I was a working film photographer at the time. And as we all know that were around in the late 1990s, those first digital cameras were very expensive and, in all honesty, not very good. So the way that I eased into it is I went with the Canon, their Power Shot, when they first started doing digital cameras, the G series, the G1, G2, all of those, because they had enough controls on them where I could use them like a real camera, but they didn't cost nearly as much as the DSLRs at that time. And so I just said, I'm just going to wait until DSLRs. I mean, I understand technology. I worked for O'Reilly Media for almost 10 years. And so technology has always been a big part of my background. And I know how technology works. And I know that digital photography wasn't something I wanted to be an early adopter for and spend $20,000, $30,000 for, a 640 by 480 resolution device.
Exactly,
Yeah. So, and then I didn't get into DSLR work with digital until the Canon 10D. And that was the first point where I thought that the camera and the price for the camera and what the camera could deliver came together into something that was reasonable.
Yeah. Whilst you're talking on price there for a moment, sorry to interrupt you, but how do you feel about the present price structure of digital cameras now as we speak? And I'm talking top-end professional cameras like the Nikon D5s and that sort of ilk. Well, how do you sort of comprehend those sort of prices now?
Well, I've never bought those cameras, to tell you the truth. Yeah. I've never bought. I shot Canon when I was, mainly a DSLR shooter, and I never bought top of the line, and nor would I buy top of the line Nikon either, because to me, and I learned this when I was working at the Olympics with the photographers that were doing some really heavy duty stuff. There are certain situations where you need those cameras. Absolutely. You need everything that you can get in terms of fast autofocusing and, and all the other features. Most of us, like for me, I'm shooting photojournalism, and I'm doing weddings, and I'm doing portraiture and all that. I did not need that. So for me, I've always been hanging around more the 5D, Mark II, Mark III level, instead of the top of the line stuff. I think that consumers or enthusiasts who spend that kind of money just because they think they're going to get professional pictures, in my opinion, are wasting their dollars. I don't think you need it. No. But some folks, they really feel good about having a tool like that, and they are great tools. But they're way too expensive.
Yeah, I agree with you. Funny enough, I started a new show last night, in my opinion, and I talked about this fact with regards to, is there a necessity to keep upgrading your camera? And I don't think photographers today really learn enough about what their camera can do. They think that buying the next camera up will improve their photography, and it's not. It's the eye and the gray matter in between the ears, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, obviously that too, yes. But going back to technology, digital cameras, for a while, every year there was a major improvement in, what they could resolve, ISO performance, all that. And then they started to flatten out, to plateau, like technology usually does. And then the improvements were more incremental. So, for instance, when I do shoot with a DSLR, I shoot mainly mirrorless now, but when I do shoot with a DSLR, I shoot with a 5D Mark II, which is, it's a number of years old now.
Yeah.
But the camera had reached a certain spot, and it produces imagery that my clients love. And I have a lot of commercial clients. And so I'm fine with it. There's no real need for me to upgrade that because I don't need any of the other features.
No. Let's go back to how did the podcast start, The Digital Story? How did that come about?
People told me I had a good radio voice.
Brilliant.
So yeah. I mean, a number of people. I started the podcast in 2005, and
Wow.
have well over 500 episodes now. And it was literally that. I was thinking about it. I was dabbling in audio already. I had to learn some audio to do video work, and so I kind of had the tool set. And people said, you should do a podcast. You have the right voice for it, and you're a storyteller. So in 2005, we pulled it together. We built a site. We built a movable type site from scratch, and launched the thing. And it took off well, and it's done great ever since. It's very popular. If you do a search on iTunes for digital photography, that podcast will be always in the top 5.
Yeah, exactly right. It will be. And because basically the basis of that show is regular updates, regular reviews of new equipment, but you keep it not like my show here, which is probably the best part of an hour. It's short and sharp and sweet, as I would call it, in terms of you get to the point, you talk about the product, and then you move on.
Yeah, so I keep the show to 30 to maybe sometimes 34 minutes. But and one of the things that I learned about publishing a long time ago, and this is very true for podcasts, is you really have to understand, what you want to do with your show. And then once you do, then you have to be very consistent. So my listeners, they have a time slot for me. They listen to me doing some activity, same time every week, generally speaking, usually commuting to that. They have a certain amount of time where they can listen to me and all that. So once they figure out how they want to consume the show, then if I stay consistent, then everything is good. Their life is good, and I don't mess things up. If I start publishing willy-nilly, or if I start changing the length of the show, and things like that, then that actually disrupts their pattern, and I don't want to do that. So for me, I think 30 minutes is good. And I've actually worked on making the show sharper and more crisp every year. And I have to do that because, in part, I'm a methodical talker. I don't talk really fast. I'm not a New York talker that goes like this. I don't rattle things off really quickly. So I talk more methodically. So I have to make sure that then what I'm saying is very pithy, and I'm not going down any rabbit holes.
Yeah, that's very true. That's how it comes across. It's methodical, which is there's nothing wrong with that in any stretch of the imagination. How did your involvement with TWIP come about, and Frederick and the guys?
Yeah, well, Frederick and I have known each other way before he became involved with TWIP, and so, and that that's the thing about being in the business, and that's where my work with O'Reilly was great because it introduced me to so many people in technology. So I first met Frederick when he was working for Apple. Yeah, and then I worked with him a little bit. I was at O'Reilly at the time, and then when he moved over to Adobe, I worked with him a bit there. And we just always got along well. And so it was just a natural that as he moves into new projects and needs guests or someone, then that he thinks of me, and we have friendship too. So all of that kind of works together. But almost all of the activity that I do, or other people that I work with, generally speaking, come out of these relationships from being in the business for a long time.
Yeah. And your involvement with writing, and obviously the products coming through the Apple stream and Canon stream, and now of course the Olympus stream, that obviously gives you a tidy link up with that particular show.
Yes. Well, and I introduced a lot of these people to Mirrorless. So, you know, one of the things that I try to do is be on top of things and identify trends early on. I identified Mirrorless early. So a lot of folks that shoot Mirrorless and talk about Mirrorless now, a lot of those folks I actually was the one that showed them.
Yeah. When did you first see your first mirrorless camera, and which product was it?
It was before it was introduced. I was already shooting for Olympus, doing some work with them with their 4/3 cameras. And so when they were ready to launch their first mirrorless camera, the EP1, we had a NDA meeting, like these things always happen. We had an NDA meeting, and they showed it to me, and then we had a shoot where they flew me out to New York with some other journalists, and we worked with the camera, learned about it and everything. So then when they announced the camera, then we had our stories and our pictures and everything ready to go. Yeah. So I mean, I was in the mirrorless camp before the cameras were even out. I was already shooting with them, and I just felt that for me that they were a trend that I thought was noteworthy, and and now these are the tools that I use most of the time.
Yeah, I must be honest. When I first saw the first mirrorless Olympus come out, it reminded me so much, obviously, of the OM1 when it first came out. It just looked such a neat camera, and it just fitted the bill and the way technology was moving. At the time, I was a Nikon shooter, and I was so sort of entrenched in that 1.5 crop Nikon cameras and lenses, and I thought that I can't really sort of ditch it at the moment until I had that moment where I got fed up with the weight of my camera bag, which I think everybody does at some stage. And that's when it all started.
Well, and so the nimble photographer, it's firmly in the whole mirrorless thing. I actually coined the phrase nimble photographer, started using it before the first mirrorless camera was out. Then when mirrorless came out, then boom, that just sort of completed the picture.
Yeah, because I remember you saying in your podcast you were really surprised that the nimble photographer as a URL was still available. And the nimble photographer was still available for you to use as a blog, and of course you developed the logo and the way it went.
Yeah.
When you think about it, and of course it's a case of, it's amazing that it hadn't been thought of before. But I suppose really prior to mirrorless, everybody wanted a camera or 2 bodies, 3 or 4 lenses, and were prepared to put up with the weight.
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, you're right about nimble photographer. I mean, the Gmail address was available, the URL was available. I got it trademarked in the US. Yeah, and that was available, and it just went on, and I just go, okay, this is. I was a little surprised. I mean, my other site is the analog story, and I was sort of surprised when that was available too, and that was just recently. But so either I like weird URLs that other people aren't thinking of, or I'm just lucky. I don't know what that is, but it seems like when I have an idea, it seems like a lot of times the URL is available. So
it just slots into place. Now that's interesting, because I haven't had a chance to really catch up on that. This analog trail. Are you saying that you're moving back, or not moving back? You're using film cameras as well now? Or you probably haven't stopped, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I did stop actually. It's interesting. I stopped for a number of years after being a film shooter since I was a kid. And I took this challenge last year. Someone wrote that you can improve your digital photography by shooting film again. And, you know, I always hear people throw stuff out like that. And you know, being a journalist at heart, I'm usually a little skeptical about stuff. So I wanted to test it myself. So I said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to test. I'm going to do a film project for a year where I also shoot analog also. And I started, so I pulled out one of my cameras and, you know, got everything dusted off and started shooting. And I forgot how much, or I realized how much I missed shooting film. I just, it was amazing how exciting it was. And it totally reinvigorated my photography, shooting film again. So I said, I think I'm, you know, again, it's like the mirrorless thing. I think I'm onto something here. And so I wanted to build a site because the tagline for the site is film photography in the digital age. So it's not just like, hey, now I'm going to throw away all my digital cameras and shoot film. I rarely am like that anyway. What it is integrating film photography into your digital workflow and taking advantage of the things that film photography has to offer, which there are quite a few.
Let's talk very briefly about that. Then what camera are you using for your analog photography?
So you mean which cameras, right?
Okay, you got a bunch of them. You're a little bit like me. I've got 5 on the shelf there.
Yeah, I mean, this is the joy of analog photography, is that I lusted after when they were coming out in the 80s and early 90s, but I couldn't afford them. And now I can afford basically any camera that I want, any film camera that I want, because I mean, with amazing lenses and everything. So I'm shooting primarily right now Pentax, Minolta, Contax, and Yashica. And I like Contax and Yashica because of the Zeiss lenses. You know, they're just really beautiful. And I love the Contax G series, the G1 and the G2. And then Pentax I love because the K-mount goes across all the cameras practically. So if you have a K-mount lens, you can basically put it on any Pentax SLR. And, you know, that's really nice, being able to do that. And then Minolta, I like the X700 on the Minolta. Yeah. And that was, excuse me, that was the last film camera they made before they got into the, you know, the whole autofocus thing. So it was the last manual focusing film camera they made. And that's just a really great machine too. So I shoot with all of them. And what I do is I capture images with them, and I'm working on a book about film photography. So I want to shoot with a variety of cameras so that it's brand agnostic that way. And then I set up an Etsy store, a store on Etsy called the Film Camera Shop. So then after I shoot with a camera for a while and have tested it, clean the mirror, bumper, and all that kind of stuff, then I sell them and I pass them through to customers.
I say that's an interesting aspect to do, actually. It's interesting you mentioned about the Pentax and the K-mount, because obviously that's very similar to the Nikon with the F-mount and how that's basically just followed its way through. And well, I've got what, 4 Nikon film cameras up there, 1 Yashica, which unfortunately has died.
It's too bad.
Yeah, it's too bad. It's one of the rangefinder style cameras. I forget which one it is, but
yeah,
I died. Unfortunately, the shutter release button, there's apparently there's a little plastic digit inside which has a tendency to just fray away after a period of time. So that died.
Yeah, but, that's common.
These things you have to get used to these things. But as you say, you can pick up a really decent film camera now for, well, in your terms, a couple of $100 is a good money to spend, but you can get a lot cheaper than that, can't you? Yeah,
I mean, I sell the cameras on my on the Film Camera Shop usually between $55 and $95 US. So that's with lens. So I mean, it's incredible. You can shoot with anything you want. I mean, that's the price of a polarizing filter.
That's very true. It is, yeah. Your workflow in the analog, you obviously you had your own darkroom. Are you doing your own darkroom work as well, or are you slinging that out to a processor to basically what we would term a hybrid processing afterwards?
Yeah, the latter. It's when I look at my time, because I'm a businessman too, and I work for myself. So for me, it doesn't make sense for me to process my own film and take that time out, although I like doing it. So the process that I have, we in Northern California here, we have a number of labs that are still working. So I send the film out to the lab, and they process the negatives, and then they scan the negatives, and then what I get back are the negs and the scans. And then the ones that I'm going to use in the book, I'll do super high-res scans of. But I usually just get, medium resolution scans. And
they come
then I have
as JPEGs?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry.
And then I have a whole filing system. When I take a photo with a film camera, I also take the shot with my iPhone. And the reason why I do that is because the iPhone records all the metadata, in terms of GPS, weather, so I have everything. And then what I do is I marry the two together. So all the film shots are cataloged, and they also have a corresponding iPhone shot that has my notes about, what I was doing at the time, things that I was trying with the camera and all that. So that when I write the book, because this is a big problem with analog in the past, right, is taking notes. So when I write the book, for every photo that I put in the book, I will be able to tell you everything about that shot because I have a corresponding journal entry. And this is where I think analog and digital marry very nicely. And part of the reason why I'm loving analog so much now is because we do have these digital tools to help us with it.
What's your preference of film with your analog photography at the moment? There's loads of different films available now still, which is amazing.
There are, and I think sales for Kodak are up 5% right now on 35 millimeter. Yeah, so I have two minds when it comes to film. One is when I just want serendipity to rule the day. I use expired film, and I just buy that cheap on eBay. And like a lot of film that I have now is over 10 years old, and I shoot with it, and it's amazing how good it turns out. It's really kind of cool. But there are little shifts, and there are things, and I like that part. And then when I want to be more exact, I still shoot with the Kodak emulsions. For high speed, I'm using the Portra 800, and for low speed, I use the Ektar 100. And for new film where I want predictable results.
Yeah.
But most of my expired film is Fujifilm Superia, either the 200 or the 400, and I just love that film. This is great.
Yeah. I was never a Fujifilm shooter. I always was Kodachrome or Ektachrome was my preference. The Kodak line, of course, you can't get Kodachrome anymore, which is a great shame. You can try and emulate, I suppose, for want of description, but that would be extremely difficult, even for the best of editors in Lightroom. I'm assuming when you're saying you catalog everything, are you using Lightroom now, or have you still?
No, I switched to Capture One Pro.
Are you? Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, because I was an Aperture user.
Yes.
And so when they stopped developing Aperture, I knew I was going to have to do something, and I shopped everything and really tested a lot of stuff, and I ended up at Capture One Pro, which I'm really, really happy with that decision. I'm loving that workflow. It's a great workflow, and they interpret RAW files extremely well.
Yeah. Now it's interesting, isn't it? You're a PC or you're a Mac user, you're a Nikon or you're a Canon user, and you were a Lightroom or it's the same old story which goes round and round. I tried both Aperture and Lightroom. I preferred the way the interface of Lightroom worked, and it suited my style. But shall we have a look at let's have a look at a screen share and have a look at your Flickr site, Derrick, because you say predominantly you're a writer, but you take some pretty damn good photographs. Let's be perfectly honest about it.
Well, I'll frame this a little bit. So I shoot for myself now. So because I write books and because I have constant trainings that I'm working on for lynda.com, plus all the publishing I do online. So my goal with my photography is not to use other people's photography. So I shoot for myself. And then I also like sharing images. So I love all the different levels of social. I love Instagram for day-to-day stuff. I like Flickr for putting shots on that are a little bit more curated. And then I use Facebook also. So, basically, I just love photography. I mean, I'm both a fan of photography and a shooter both. So this shot here, this is the kind of shot that comes out of my roots as a photojournalist. If I were looking for a shot to go with an article that I was doing about the Warriors' next game, and maybe the fans were nervous about it, maybe because of what was going on, then I'd be looking for a shot, to illustrate that. And this is the kind of a shot that I would do for a newspaper article. The thing that I look for a lot in my journalism is, for instance, something that tells a story. I love telling a story in a photo. I love working with repetition and then disrupting the repetition with just one element in the photograph, and then making sure that element's placed in a spot that I think is interesting. So this is something that you can just see my roots as a photojournalist. I think come out in shots like this.
Yeah. So. When you take a shot like that one you just done talked about of the Warriors, are you basically are you thinking of the photograph, or are you thinking of the potential article?
Well, if I have an article that I'm working on, then I'm thinking of the article. But most of the time when I shoot, I'm just going for a photograph that interests me. And like go back to the Norman Cleaners one for a second, the previous shot. Sure. So now this shot here, I know that I was working on an article about filters, editing extension for photos, the application photos. And so I just wanted something graphical because I knew that I needed a sample to show how these filters work. And so in this case, I'm actually thinking about an article, and I just want to have something that would be kind of fun to show off the technique that I'm doing. And a lot of my photography is like that. I'm looking for something that will help me illustrate a story about a piece of software or some equipment.
I get you. I was just going to say, when you were talking this shot, I just love this shot. I love the angle, and you've got a little bit of lens flare in the left-hand side there of the image.
This is a happy accident. So obviously the composition was planned, and I was testing a film camera, and that's what I do. A lot of cameras that you buy online, the people that sell them, they either don't know about the state of the camera or they don't tell. And so it's always a bit of a risk. So what I do is I take these cameras, and before I move them on, I film test them and to make sure that everything's okay. This camera, when I looked at it, I thought the back light seals were in good shape, but obviously I missed something. And so I'm in San Francisco and I'm shooting with this, having a good time. And there was a major light leak, in the back panel. And it just worked in my favor. It's like every other shot on the roll. I mean, I think out of the roll of 36, I got 3 shots that I like, but the 3 shots that I like, I really love. So
exactly.
And that I think that sums up film photography.
It's funny enough. Until you actually started talking about it, I suddenly saw down testing of contacts, and I thought I've got to scroll down, and then of course the story slots in on what you're talking about there. But what I love about this Flickr site, I'm not saying this because you're my guest, but I really mean this. There's such a great selection here of different styles of photography. You've had the macro, we've had some street, and all these sort of things. And I think it's so good to see where someone isn't just basically down one path all the time. It's always a mono shot. It's always street photography. it's great to see a difference of work.
Well, in my case, I just love photography. I just love taking pictures, and I've always been a generalist. That's the train station in Glasgow. I just so I always love working with different things, and I don't think I could ever be just a portrait photographer or just a street shooter. That would bore me. You know, I wake up in the morning and I'm thinking, what do I want to go do today? You know, I mean, I have my to-do list like every other responsible person, but I also have, because I work for myself, I also can go shoot whenever I want, you know, if I don't have a client meeting. And that's what I do. I go, you know, what do I want to do today? What do I want to take pictures of? You know, what do I want to play with? And so you see that I do a lot of reporting. If you look at the shot here with the guy with the goggles on, you know, the VR goggles. So I'm working CES, and so I just, you know, I knew I wanted a shot like that. And because I'm tall, I can get angles that other people can't get. And, you know, so that shot to me tells a story. And I think 20 years from now, shots like that will be very interesting.
Yeah, they will be. Let's. I'm going to finish on this camera here, because when I saw this come out, I thought, wow. I've got the Fuji X100S, and obviously I know the T's come out after that, and I thought, here we go. We've got this beautiful retro look coming back into these cameras, and the rangefinder style is really becoming quite a big favorite now with the camera manufacturers. I think the only two that aren't doing it at the moment are Nikon and Canon. But anyway, that's another story, isn't it?
Another story, yeah.
Excuse the pun. But just give a little bit of a quick sort of synopsis of your opinions of this camera, please, Derrick.
This is, you know, this is interesting. What Olympus did with this camera is take a really, I think, a big risk, in that they wanted to make this camera, and they wanted to pull out all the stops on this camera. And that's exactly what they did. And, you know, obviously they're going to hope that it sells, but they just wanted to make this camera. And I know this because, you know, for instance, I took this picture of it before it was released. We were shooting in Austin with it before it was released, you know, gathering some collateral so that we could publish stories when it was released. So, you know, we spent a lot of time with them talking about it. And this is a wonderful camera in so many ways. First of all, it's made to the highest standards. I mean, it is actually, it's a supremely built camera, and you feel it the minute you pick it up. It's designed, I think, a lot for street shooting. It's better with shorter lenses. It's a very move quickly, move through the world kind of camera. I think it's really best with prime lenses, in my opinion. And then the other thing that I like about it is that they put wonderful controls for controlling both black and white emulation and color. And so you can really customize this camera to produce just about any look that you want. And I was shooting a lot with it in black and white, and I configured it for Tri-X, which is one of my favorite black and white emulsions. I like Ilford's HP5 both. And I configured this for Tri-X and was shooting RAW plus JPEG with it. My JPEGs were super fine resolution and basically looked like Tri-X. And then I still had the RAW files to do anything I wanted with. You know, you get both. And I was just so impressed with it, so impressed. I think it's a beautiful work of art, and I think it's an excellent tool also.
Yeah, I must be honest, I haven't seen it physically because I was a little bit disappointed actually with the Olympus stand at the recent photo show in the UK. You couldn't get near the stand to see the Olympus pen. You had to book in advance to talk to someone about it, which is a big disappointment. Yeah, you could see the DSLR range of their Micro Four Thirds range, but you couldn't get to just drop by the stand and say, hey, I'm a Fuji shooter, show me this Olympus pen. I want to see how good it is compared to what I'm shooting with. So which was a big disappointment, but I can see the attractiveness of it. It just looks a beautiful camera. And typical Olympus, I know they've been through their problems, but I think they've come through that now. Seem to be making some very good quality equipment, especially on the fact that, of course, their lenses work with how many, their cameras, sorry, the bodies work with how many lenses in the world. You know, they've got
the catalog is
amazing. It's a huge stable, although that not 100% Olympus Zuko lenses, but obviously third-party lenses. Yeah, they certainly set the game, didn't they?
Yeah. I mean, I shoot about half and half with the Olympus lenses and Panasonic lenses, and I have some of the Panasonic lenses I love a lot too. I have a Leica Panasonic lens, the 25 millimeter f1.4. That is, you know, I get to have a Leica lens on a micro four thirds camera, and it's stunning, you know. So yeah, and that's the thing about having this big catalog to choose from. The glass is fun with micro four thirds. It really is.
Going back to what we were talking about with the analog photography, that came as a little bit of a surprise to me, because I didn't know you'd moved into that area, and doing that photography is a good way to go back and start using film cameras as a way of improving your digital photography.
What it does, I'll tell you, Paul, the thing that analog has done for me, and it was a bit of a surprise, but I found that I was actually, over the years of digital, I was moving faster and faster and faster and faster, and we all kind of get caught up in the speed of everything, and I wasn't necessarily getting better. I was moving faster, but I wasn't necessarily getting better. So analog was a bit of a reset for me. And I'll work on a roll of film for 3 or 4 days to complete it, and that's 36 exposures. And I'm really thinking about the shots, and then there's the whole thing. You can't look at it on LCD afterwards, so you really have to make sure that you get what you want, and then you have to wait to see it, and so then there's that whole thing, and it really has forced me to kind of return to the basics of photography and be I think a better craftsman, in all honesty.
Interesting point you made there, because I was thinking about this only a few days ago when I heard someone saying, oh, this camera focuses faster than the last one, and this camera is far faster than this one, and so on and so forth. And then someone popped up. I just recently bought the X Pro 1. I wanted to buy the 2, but I couldn't afford it. But I bought the X Pro 1. And the reason I bought the Pro 1 was simply on the guy said, yeah, it doesn't focus as fast as the Pro 2, which it doesn't, because I've tested that as well. He said, but I was brought up with film cameras, and I used to have to manual focus. And it just suddenly dawned on me, why does everyone seem to need a fast focus straight away? And as you say, it goes on. You become faster. You take more photographs. You then and you're not thinking about your photography. It's such a good point you make there. Such a good point.
Well, if we go back to, I usually try to stay away from sports metaphors, but I allow myself one per interview, and so I'm going to use it now. So in basketball, there are 2 types of scorers, shooters. And there are the ones that are very deadly accurate, and they might not take a lot of shots, but their percentage is high. And then there are other shooters, we call them volume shooters. So they're shooting a lot. So at the end of the game, they may have 30 points, but it might have taken them 50 shots to get those 30 points. And to me, that's kind of the difference between film and digital. If I only shoot digital, then I become a volume shooter. I'm just shooting so many frames. Just because I can, I just hold down the button, and I'm trying this angle, this angle, this angle. And, at the end of the day, I'm taking 3 or 4 shots out of 100 that I want to use. Whereas with film, I'll shoot a roll of 36, and I'll take 3 or 4 shots out of that roll that I want to use. But a lot of times the percentage will go up to even 10, 11, 12 out of 36. So the quality of imagery is much higher. Yeah.
Your analogy there is very good, unless you're really talking about Kobe Bryant. Sorry, I didn't mean you to choke on your water there.
I'm a huge Kobe fan.
He's just out there. He's a different sort of player. Well, was
he's a different animal, and I miss him already.
He's an absolutely amazing player. Amazing player. It's disappointing when someone of such talent calls it a day. And last game he scored 58, 60 points or something and pulled the game out for the Lakers.
He didn't score quite that many, but he had a good game, and he could barely get out on the court. I mean, talk about a guy that played until he could play no more. That's Kobe Bryant, and that's the way you expect him to go out, right?
Yeah, exactly right. He's
a warrior.
Amazing. I must be honest, I'd never really heard of the Warriors at all until I saw you were shooting them, and a few others. Not a great basketball fan, but no, I love the way the guys play out there. We come to that time of the show, Derrick, where I'd really love to ask you, who's your favorite photographer?
Such a hard question, but I'm going to give you my favorite today. W. Eugene Smith, who was obviously black and white photographer, masterful in the darkroom, good storyteller, dramatic tones in his images. When I flip through his books and look at his images, I just want to go shoot black and white film.
Your jaw drops. I know exactly how you feel.
And for those of you who enjoy black and white film and good storytelling and interesting subjects, I just think he's one of the masters.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, love it. And of course, that in actual fact brings it round again to why analog photography, I personally think analog photography is making a real decent comeback. And I think because everyone's seeing these old masters, Cartier-Bresson, Brassard, Eugene Smith, Henri Latigue as well, which has come out just recently as well, coming to the fore because of his chromatic work as well. And then of course you got the others, Vivian Maier as well, which is the newfound old photographer.
Exactly.
Great. I think it's really great that these masters, use the term, are bringing that interest back into photography through film photography. Derrick, who would you say has been most influential in your career?
I think that's an interesting question, because then I think we go back to the writing side in terms of my career. I mean, there are photographers that I love and that I study. I was a design minor in school, but I was an English major, so a lot of photographers have influenced me. But for me, photography is an expression of an idea, and so a lot of writers, their approach to writing, the one that I'm going to cite right now, Ernest Hemingway, the way that he wrote, the brevity in his writing, the way that he handled dialogue, it was so concise, and so it had such a nice meter to it, and the way that everything was, I felt, tight in the way he told the story. No waste. Very efficient writer. And as a writer, he really influenced my photography also. He influenced my writing, but he also influenced my photography, because I wanted to have that same efficiency in my visual work. And if you look at my Instagram feed, for example, you'll see that I like clean compositions, and I like have a good central subject, and I like the viewer to be able to figure out really quickly what's going on. And so I would say, oddly enough, that Ernest Hemingway influenced my photography as much as anyone.
Yeah, great writer. I've only read one of his books, the one which was can't remember the title, came to the fore after the Paris atrocities last year, where a lot of people went out and bought the book and basically placed it as a form of remembrance because of the writing of Paris that he put together. No, it's,
I'll tell you.
I think he can be a little bit heavy. Would you say, in terms of reading?
Yeah. He's definitely got a heavy side to him. He suffered from depression and ultimately took his own life. But a really good airplane book is The Old Man and the Sea. And
yes, I know the title.
Yeah, he won a Nobel for that, I believe, and in writing. And it's a quick read, and that really to me sums up him as a writer. So if you only read one book by him, I would either read that one or Farewell to Arms. Both of them are really good.
That's lovely. Thank you for those two there. I'm just going to go back to screen share because we haven't got time to talk about your workshops and stuff like that. But I just wanted to show to the viewers when they're looking at it. This is Derrick's website, The Digital Story. Everything is here that you want: photography, writings, nimble photography, the photographer rather, workshops, podcasts, etc., etc. It is a very, very detailed website, always has been, and they get natural links onto all his podcasts as well, which is and they're an absolute joy to listen to because, as I said, Derrick, they're methodical, they're to the point, and it comes about in the way you set up your you're going to set up this analog book on photography book. You're going through the methodical range of the iPhone photograph to get all that detail in with the image. Absolutely,
yeah. I mean,
fantastic.
I think one thing as we're going down the home stretch here, that something that I feel strongly about. You kind of alluded to this earlier, that photographers tend to want to say one thing against another constantly, and I'm a little bit more towards integration. So, for instance, when I moved to Mirrorless, I didn't tell everyone, hey, you have to sell your DSLRs and shoot with this. I said, there are going to be some jobs where mirrorless are better. There's going to be some situations where your DSLR is better. Same thing with film versus digital photography, and it goes on and on through software. Even though I use Capture One Pro primarily, I also use photos, a lot because of the editing extensions, and I think they're really interesting. So, the thing that if you listen to my podcast or you follow my site or anything, you're not going to find me saying, you have to get rid of this and do that. That's not the way I approach it. I'm trying to take all these wonderful things that we have available to us and integrate them so that they're best for you. Whatever your particular needs are as an artist, and to tell a story and to have your photographs say something. And that's really what gets me excited.
Yeah, and get your photographs out there, whether it be on Flickr, Instagram, your own personal website, or if you go down that line, you want to print them as well and put them on the wall. Get the photographs out there for people to view. And to be quite honest with you, at the end of the day, from my liking, it doesn't matter if you get 500 or just 5 likes. You've put the photograph out there, and it's available for people to see the work.
I agree, and you actually have to be careful with likes, because you don't want to start shooting for likes. That will take your photography down a path that you probably don't want to go down in the end.
Yeah, that's understood. That's a very, very good point to finish on, Derrick. Derrick, thank you so much for joining me in such a busy time as you have at the moment. It sounds as though your day is not 24 hours, but your week is 7 days a week. I wish you every continued success, and I'm really looking forward to that analog book when that comes out.
Me too. Me too.
Bit of work to do by the sound of things, but hey, I know you'll press on with it. I know you will, because you're that type of fella. Derrick, thank you so much for joining me. I've really enjoyed talking to you. And hey, folks, well, today's Thursday. Fingers crossed we're going to have another sunny day tomorrow. If you're out shooting this weekend, I'll tell you what, leave your camera bag at home. All the best. Bye for now.
All right.